Okay, so thank you for joining me, everybody. My name's Jonas Stabik. I'm a coach and mentor, and I work pretty exclusively these days with digital agency owners, helping them with growth, whatever growth means to them. So it might be a bigger business, more time, more freedom, more money, all that kind of stuff. I'm an ex-agency owner, and I do talks, not always like this, normally on business growth, all around the world for companies like Google and Forbes. And I have a job that I love. I'm absolutely passionate about it, and it doesn't feel like work. And I feel very, very fortunate. But the road to get here has been paved with mental health challenges. Um, and I'm talking about it today, I think, because a lot of the people I think here might work for agencies or work in a kind of fast-paced service-based business, which can be crazy places to work. And COVID and lockdown has, as you know, has made working a little bit more challenging. And I think things like mental health are topics and problems that perhaps more people are dealing with now than they were previously. And I'm talking to help raise awareness, I think, raise awareness of perhaps what the symptoms can be, what we can do about it, and what I did and how I helped myself. And, if I can help one person to kind of see something in themselves or perhaps to see something in somebody else, then this talk has done its job. So I started my life, the career that I'm currently doing started as an agency owner. I ran an agency called Mayfly Media based in Bristol. We built websites on content management systems, and we did really, really well. And it was an agency. There was roller coaster revenue. There was missed deadlines. There was the bills to pay. There was wages to kind of find, that kind of whole feeding the beast type scenario. And you ride that wave of, there's a fine line, I think, between sort of anxiety and fun, and sometimes you enjoy it and sometimes it's really, really hard work. But, on the whole, it was awesome and I loved it. And then I started working as a non-executive director, working with other agency owners. And I love it, and I found my thing. I was like, do you know what? Agency life isn't for me anymore. I just love working with engaged agency owners, and I found a job that I love. And then 2 years ago, my life changed forever, and I was transitioning into a new career. And something happened. It involved an earthquake, and this kind of kick-started my mental health challenges. 2 years ago, myself and my family, my wife, my three kids, Effie, Mila, and Joshi, we went traveling around the world. We did 6 weeks traveling around Southeast Asia. This is a stud on the Formula One track in Singapore. I'm not going to bore you with all 400 holiday snaps, but I will show you a few. So we made our way around Southeast Asia. We visited Malaysia, Langkawi, Phuket, Vietnam, Hanoi, Kuala Lumpur, all these amazing places. And towards the end of July 2018, we were due to fly to an island called Lombok, which sits just next to Bali. Bali's here, Lombok's here. And we were in Kuala Lumpur at the time. So we were due to fly out to Lombok, and we heard news of an earthquake in Lombok that scared us a little. We thought, whoa, hang on a minute. Should we be traveling to this region with 3 young kids? And we kind of ummed and ahed for 2 or 3 days about whether we should go and whether we shouldn't. We did a ton of research, we read all of the scientific blogs and all that kind of stuff. And the consensus was, actually, lightning doesn't strike twice when it comes to earthquakes. Not in the same place anyway. If a big earthquake has happened, and it was over 6, I think, a 6.5 on the Richter scale, which is a big deal. Then it's not going to happen again within a short proximity. So we made our way to Lombok. We flew. This is us arriving at Lombok Airport, and we found our little piece of paradise. Gorgeous bungalows, 100 yards from the beach. We had the place to ourselves whilst we were there, and we spent 2 or 3 days traveling the island, rainforests and beaches, and yeah, it was beautiful. Good food, all that kind of stuff. And we woke up on the morning of the 5th of August, 2018, on a day like any other. We made our way to a beach, and we spoke to a guy who runs a restaurant on the beach, and he was telling us about how a mini tsunami had hit a week before in the previous earthquake, and this big wave, a bigger wave than normal, kind of made its way all the way up the beach and went through the restaurant and took the restaurant kind of with it. And it left his restaurant in tatters, but nobody got hurt. It was a pretty unpowerful wave, which got us thinking, about what would we do if this happened to us. So we went back to the bungalows, made our way out for dinner that evening. This was at about, I think, 7:15 p.m. on the evening of the 5th of August. This photo was taken 3 minutes before the earthquake struck. We're sat on a wooden platform, just finishing up our dinner. And I remember distinctly, actually, not noticing the earthquake at first. It almost felt like being at an airport and feeling and hearing an airplane take off. And all of a sudden, I kind of come to and look at my wife, and my wife had already noticed it. And I was like, shit, this is one. This is an earthquake. And suddenly screams and panic, and this deck that we were in started shaking around. So we ran. I picked up my son and my middle daughter, Mila, and we ran out to, there's a patch of wasteland just outside the restaurant just here. I have my daughter and my son in my arms, and I just remember the look of kind of panic and fear and, screams in their eyes, and they're just asking me to make it stop, make it go away. And everything kind of calmed down a little bit. None of the buildings kind of fell down around us. The panic had kind of subsided, and we were just stuck in this moment of what do we do? What do we do? And then all of a sudden, everything changed. And within the space of a second, and I can hear it now, the worst sound I've ever heard: screams, panic, headlights, mopeds, cars, people getting kind of knocked over and run down in the street, running from sort of this direction. The beach was over here, and there's a road that ran parallel to the restaurant. We were stood here, and everybody was kind of running from the sea, being channeled down this kind of tiny road. And I think the best way I can describe it is, anybody who's ever been to Wembley, it was almost like Wembley way before a football match. And just imagine the whole crowd of people just running in sheer terror and sheer panic towards you, with kind of headlights from cars beaming at you. And this was it. This was the moment we felt like we were a minute from death, and you're holding your kids in your arms, not knowing what to do. So we saw a wall about here, maybe 6 or 7 feet high. In that part of the world, nothing's built very sturdily. It's cinder blocks or breeze blocks cobbled together with, makeshift concrete. So we climbed the wall, and I was 10 seconds away. I picked up my daughter, and I was about to throw her onto the balcony of this house here, over 20, 30 foot drop, because it was the least worst thing to do, get as high as we could, risk the kids falling, I guess, and just get them as high as we could. And we managed to get coaxed down. There was a security guard, and he was like, "Don't do it. You don't want to be on a wall. You don't want to be in a house around here if another earthquake hits." And he kind of got us to get down. And the tsunami never came. It wasn't a tsunami. It was kind of hundreds, thousands of people, I don't know, maybe running in panic from the beach. And over the next 30 minutes, we gathered our things, and we managed to kind of flag down a guy that was escaping the low land near the sea up into the hills in a flatbed truck. So we kind of jump in this flatbed truck with another family, and we make our way up into the up into the hills. And what happened, there was a series of earthquakes that evening, or a series of tremors, I guess, and it was a 7, I think a 7.2 it ultimately registered on the Richter scale. It was a big deal. We were in the south of the island here. The majority of the earthquakes and the majority of the damage happened in the north of the island. And I think it was about 30 miles from where we were. 600 people died, mostly in the north. And we were somewhere down in the south. Anyway, we made our way into the hills, which were somewhere around here, and we found on a raised piece of ground a group of Westerners huddled around a campfire, no phone signals, just desperation. 30 or 40 people kind of staring into this campfire, trying to get out of the way of the sea, I guess. And we stayed there. Within about 2 hours, I think somebody had brought us up some water. Somebody went venturing some water, brought some water up, brought some food up. But then everybody gradually went away and went back to the villages and risk going further back down towards the ground, I guess. And we stayed up there. I didn't want to be in a position again of having 3 young kids and not being able to run and not being able to jump on a moped and all that kind of stuff. I didn't want to place my family in that danger again. So we stayed by the campfire. I kept the fire going throughout the evening. My wife and children got some sleep. Where we were actually was a place that we'd driven past throughout the day, during the day, and we'd seen a bunch of locals beating a pit viper, a super poisonous snake, to death, and a huge crowd of people. So I was incredibly aware and probably a little bit panicky and fearful of these horrible poisonous snakes coming out and biting us in our sleep. So I was patrolling the area. Anyway, I kept the fire going till sunrise. At sunrise, we ventured back down to the road and again flagged down another flatbed truck. 2 ladies in the back of the van who'd been fishing, and we managed to catch their attention. And we gave them some money to take us to the airport. And the way to the airport, this was kind of what we were seeing. I'd managed to get a message to my dad through a German girl that we'd met by the bonfire to get him to book me a flight, or book us a flight out of Lombok the next day, because we knew that the airport would be jam-packed. So we kind of made our way, past the fallen buildings to the airport, where the aftershocks continued, and screams and panic as the whole airport, everybody in the airport kind of ran out of the doors in the buildings as the aftershocks continued throughout the day. But 24 hours later, I think we were off the island. We're in Phuket. We managed to get a flight to somewhere that, based on our kind of assessment of whether a tsunami would reach us or not, we booked a flight to Phuket, which seemed to be out of the line of sight of a tsunami, I think is probably the best way of putting it. And that was it. We continued our holiday. We made our way to Vietnam, Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh, and had an awesome time, and continued it with the rest of our lives, or at least I thought. So, the long and short of it is we survived. There was no tsunami. The ground shook a bit, but we went through this horrible traumatic moment, I guess, with this panic of people that felt like we were seconds from death, and there was nothing that we could do about it. So we continued our lives. That was August, September 2018. Fast forward February 2019, actually. And we go to Center Parcs near us. We live not far from Bath. We went to Center Parcs at Longleat, and it's with my wife's family, and we're sat having lunch in one of the restaurants. And I'm talking to my brother-in-law, who's on the left-hand side of me, and normal conversation, and my eyes go black, and I pass out, only for 2 or 3 seconds. And I came to in an utter state of confusion, of dizziness, of just heart palpitations, and not knowing what the hell was going on. So my brother-in-law managed to get me back to the chalet, and I slept for 24 hours. Prior to this point, I'd been working, life was good. I'd had no negativity going on in my life or anything like that. And all of a sudden, I blacked out. And over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks, which involved a holiday skiing, we went skiing in France, actually, the symptoms got progressively worse and worse. And I had no idea what these symptoms were. Again, just complete intense dizziness that comes out of nowhere. I remember getting to Bristol Airport and, the whole place was spinning and I couldn't walk and I had to kind of hold on to the side, not knowing what was going on. Complete confusion. I remember being in the chalet in France and holding the walls and, almost not knowing who I was and where I was and who I was with. So I ended up flying back from France, and these symptoms got progressively worse and worse. And, your mind, the symptoms are so physical, your mind goes immediately to the worst thing. It's a brain tumor, right? That nothing else can be causing these symptoms. And then the electric shock starts in your head, and it's electric shock. It's the only way you can describe it, from the center of your head out towards your eyeballs, completely unexpected, particularly when you're trying to get to sleep, and it's a doof, like that. And I saw a really, really good doctor. I went to the doctor and they gave me some neurology tests, and they said, there's nothing in your head. It's not a brain tumor. It sounds like it could be PTSD or anxiety. And I was like, no, I don't think you understand. I'm fine. I have positive thoughts. I'm not anxious or nervous about anything. And he taught me through the symptoms, and, these symptoms they're really physical. Standing on stage, doing a talk can give you a bit of jitters, but that's not anxiety. Anxiety is a physical thing. It's based on adrenaline. Your body kind of loses control of the production of adrenaline and causes all these kind of physical symptoms. So, I did a bit of reading, as you do. You kind of want to validate, I think, what the doctor is telling you. And I started seeing actually these electric. I read that these electric shocks in your head, they're called brain zaps, to do with misfiring serotonin receptors in your brain. And they cause an electric shock in your head, and they're attached to anxiety. And that was the thing that made me realize, hang on a minute, perhaps this doctor's right. This crazy doctor that says I've got PTSD might be right. So I saw an awesome therapist in Bath, who specializes in trauma and PTSD. Fortunately, the PTSD element of the issues that I was facing, on the scale of mental health conditions, apparently is quite fixable, and they don't necessarily know why. But the therapy I had was a therapy called EMDR, eye movement desensitization therapy. And the theory is that when you go through a traumatic event, and for me, it was particularly that moment when I was holding my kids, and we thought the tsunami was coming, and I had kind of my daughter looking at me in particular. You go into fight or flight mode, and you react the best way that you can, and you stop processing the emotions, the sights, the sounds, all that kind of stuff, and they just sit there unfiled away in your brain, in your head. And then when you go through something similar later, and by similar again, it can be a sight, a sound, an emotion, a smell, a feeling of a texture, something like that. It brings all of that stuff back into your forethought, into your conscious again. All of that stuff that wasn't processed at the time comes out in abundance. And we think that, as I sat down at Center Parcs to have that lunch with my daughter, what happened 5 minutes prior to that point was I'd lost my daughter. I'd arrived and realized she wasn't with us, and I panicked. I went from no emotion to 100% really, really quickly. And that, rise in anxiety and adrenaline from zero to this, with associated to my daughter, kind of brought all this trauma and feelings and sights and sounds and emotions that I'd been through during the earthquake back. And that's what triggered this whole kind of PTSD episode. This eye movement desensitization thing, it worked, and the electric shocks went away, and the dizziness went away. But what ensued was the best part of well, when was this? February 2019. I'd say I've been 100% better 90% of the time for 2 months, so I'm almost there, I think. But the electric shocks and the dizziness went, but then you're left with this depression, and the best way I can describe depression, bear with me, is like being in San Francisco, being dumped by the love of your life and jumping on a transatlantic flight and drinking 2 bottles of wine, and then arriving at Heathrow with a hangover, jet lag, and the sadness of being dumped. All those 3 things combined together. You can't think your way out of the physical symptoms of the hangover and the jet lag combined, and it's underpinned by this sadness that you just can't shake off. You can't think your way out of it. And it was a real eye-opener for me, actually, that the physicalness of the symptoms attached to depression and PTSD and anxiety, just I had no idea, absolutely no idea. And that you can't think your way out of it. Anybody that knows me, I'm very faddy. I find an immense amount of enjoyment in learning new stuff, in being outdoors, and adrenaline and mountain biking and snowboarding and all this kind of stuff. So, I have a lust for life typically, so this stuff that came out of nowhere, literally one day at Center Parcs, and all these symptoms that ensued that you can't just think your way out of and get better on it's tough. It's really, really tough. But I'm feeling better, and I've got some good tactics, I think, that can hopefully help people, hopefully. And then here I am now. I've got a job that I absolutely love, that I'm passionate about. I found my, I've lost the image. I found my ikigai. There's a Japanese theory of ikigai, right? So that if you can find something that you love, that the world needs, that you can get paid to do, and that you're good at, then it doesn't feel like work. And when I was a kid, I wanted to be a professional footballer because I could get paid to do something that I loved. And I found that now. And again, I get on stage and I do talks and I kind of run these programs. So I'm feeling good, and work was a bit of a positive and helped me get through it. So what? Why is my story interesting? Got this guy, he's got a job that he enjoys, and he's had a bit of a rough ride. So what? So why am I telling you this? I think firstly, it's about awareness, and don't suffer in silence. It can be really, really difficult to understand and see it in yourself and be aware, I think, of the symptoms in yourself and in others, but as soon as my experience has been that as soon as you start to feel a bit different, go and talk to somebody and go and see somebody. The longer it goes on without getting help, I think the worse that it gets. Do get a second opinion. The doctor that I saw in France, and again, this was whilst we were skiing. I saw this doctor in France. I ended up going home after seeing him. He gave me some Nurofen, some really, really expensive Nurofen. Charged me 50 quid for a pack of Nurofen and said I had a headache. And if I'd have taken his advice and just, not acted on it, then I'd probably be in a very different position now. But, don't suffer in silence, get some help and do get a second opinion. And also I think the mind and the body keep score. The trauma I went through during the earthquake was a big event. My opinion is, and I have no proof of this, is that it was the straw that broke the camel's back. The stress and the anxiety that you go through when running a business or even working in an agency. It's like an elastic band, being stretched, and your body doesn't really feel it being stretched. Sometimes you can feel a bit tired and a bit stressed, but all of a sudden, it snaps. My opinion is that the earthquake event was the snapping of the elastic band, or perhaps the thing at Center Parcs was, and all of us, and then your body's broken, and there's something that needs to be done, but you can only stretch it so far. And, the mind and the body keep score, and just be aware of that. I think, take care of yourself. If you're feeling stressed and anxious, you've got to be topping yourself up with sleep and exercise and all that kind of stuff. Finally, the symptoms can be really physical. That blew my mind. I'd read about this thing called mental health before. Mental health to me sounds like some thoughts that go on in your head, and not stuff that affects your body. So I call it head health now. It starts in the head, but it affects the rest of your body, because this whole mental health thing just makes me feel like it's a bit too thought related, and again, you can't think your way out of it. Some of the symptoms are incredibly physical. Also, I think just be there for someone. There was a moment for me where it got a little bit lonely. There's initially, I told people, I told my friends and family about my mental health issues, which is great. It's good. It's cathartic to talk about it. But then I think people can be a little standoffish because they're worried about saying the wrong thing, and as a consequence, the phone can stop ringing and the door can stop knocking, and then it gets a little bit lonely. But if you know somebody who's going through something like this, just check in on them. Just, keep asking for them to come to the pub or whatever we can do during lockdown. They might not always respond. They might not always say yes. They might never respond or say yes. But just be the person that shows interest, even if they're not saying yes and getting back to you, because it does make a difference, just to know that there is somebody out there, I think, that cares. Finally, it's really, really tough going through all this kind of stuff, but wellness is just around the corner. The pills worked. The pills the doctors take you, they do work. You have up days and down days, but some people are a bit funny about taking antidepressants, I think, but you take Nurofen and paracetamol for a headache. You take these pills for this thing, and they do make you feel better. So I think there should be less stigmatism about it. Having a job that you loved, and a family and all that kind of thing, just surrounding yourself with positive things makes a difference. It doesn't make every day good, but it makes the bad days a little bit less worse, I think. And there are no silver bullets. You can't just take the pills and get better. There are no silver bullets. Wellness for me came from a continuity, a repetition of doing lots and lots of things over and over and over and over again. And I got the analogy from a guy called James, the analogy of it being like going to the gym, from a guy called James Clear, who wrote this book. And this book is useful, whatever you want to do. If you're struggling with mental health, if you want to get fit, if you want to be more productive, if you want to build a business, whatever your goal is, I think this book, I don't know if it probably saved my life. Maybe that's too strong a statement, but it helped me to get better. And the analogy is, so many people sign up for a gym membership in January, and they hope that just by having that gym membership, they're going to get fit and lose the weight and get buff. And that's not what works. What works is the compound effect. It's like compound interest of going to the gym every single day, of eating less and eating healthy every single day. And gradually over time, these micro habits that you're continuing with and repeating have an effect, and improve you day after day, week after week. And I read this, in the depths of my sorrow, I guess, and completely changed my life. And I realized that, I'd been to some seminars on mental health run by the NHS, and they give you the advice about, you need good sleep and you need to eat well and all this kind of stuff. And I think what you do is you try it. You look for the silver bullet. You go, right, tonight I'm going to have a whole foods and broccoli, and then tomorrow I'm going to wake up feeling great. And it's not the case. There's no silver bullets. But doing this kind of stuff over and over, day after day, week after week, is what helped. And for me, this was it. It was taking my pills. It was doing 10,000 steps a day with an early morning walk, and getting apparently the blue light in the morning triggers your circadian rhythm to I don't know, I can't remember. Wim Hof breathing. If you haven't heard of Wim Hof, it's awesome. You always feel great after a 10-minute breathing exercise from Wim Hof. He's a bit nuts, but always interesting. And you get a free meditation. I've never been one for meditation and listening to kind of plinky plonky music and somebody telling me to picture a sunrise in a field. I could never concentrate like that. But Wim Hof breathing technique for 10 minutes, you get a free meditation and a cold shower. I challenge you not to feel awesome after a cold shower, making sure I spend, I focus on spending time with my kids and my wife every day, 2 liters of water, vitamins, exercise, writing in a journal, saying thank you for something at the end of the day, going to bed with a positive thought. All this stuff sounds so trivial when I say it to you now. Eating a lot of broccoli, apparently 90% of serotonin is produced in the gut, and broccoli is the thing that helps us produce the most serotonin, and not drinking. And it was through, James Clear's this method of doing lots of stuff, lots of little things over and over and over and over again that makes a difference. And for me, it was this, doing these really, really trivial things to make sure that I was filling my body and my mind up with the right kind of stuff over and over again. And what saved my life? It was this piece of paper. It was a habit tracker. I haven't. If you want a copy of it, I mean, it's dead simple. You can just screenshot this screen. And what you do is you write down, what do you want to be doing? I want to be taking the pills and my morning walk, and et cetera, et cetera. And you have to chain it to something that you're already doing. If you're trying to build a habit, it's really, really hard to start from scratch. It takes between 26 and 60 days to build a new habit. But if you chain it to something that you're already doing, you're making it harder for you not to do it than to do it. So when would I take my pills? After brushing my teeth specifically. So I put the pills next to my toothbrush. And then when I sit at my desk, I tick off that I've done the thing. And you kind of gamify these little habits, right? So you don't want to see the gaps. I felt incredibly guilty that on the Tuesday I'd missed doing my exercise. So it makes you go the extra 10%. It makes you do these little things over and over and over and over again. And gradually over time, and for me, it's taken probably about a year of doing this stuff. And again, I'm 100% better 90% of the time. But yes, habit tracking, lots of things over and over again do make a difference. So what's the message? I guess what's the message from my ramblings today? The body can keep score. We work in agencies. It's crazy. It's stressful. It's up and down. Sometimes we're working late and we're not getting a lot of sleep. Take care of yourself, because your body's keeping score of that kind of stuff, and we don't want it to come back and hurt us in the future. But mental health issues can be as physical, I think, as they are mental, if that's the right way to talk about it. That if you're not feeling yourself, if you're feeling tired, if you're feeling lethargic, if you've got heart palp, whatever, just go and see somebody. And get a second opinion, if it's not really matching what they're saying. Give your mind and body the best chance of repairing itself. If I'd have continued to drink alcohol and not eat healthy, perhaps, and slept in and not gone for my early morning walk, I don't know. I'm convinced I wouldn't be well again now. And talk about it. If I can talk about it, and I'm a mentor to people, and it's hard, I guess, I think, for a mentor to be vulnerable and to show a weakness, but because people look to me for advice. But if I can do it and stand on a stage and talk about it, then so can you. We shouldn't be secretive about these things. That doesn't help anybody. And that success and wellness and all that kind of thing, whatever we're doing, if we're building a business, if we're trying to get fit, if we're trying to be healthy, if we're working on a relationship, whatever, there's no silver bullets, but this single piece of paper, this habit tracker can really help. That's it. If you want to copy the habit tracker, email me, Janusz, JANUSZ @digitalagency.coach. I'll be delighted to share it with you. It's just a PDF. I use it with my clients, and it really, really works. And finally, a big thank you to sponsors and partners, without which the Bath Digital Festival would not be possible. Yes, thank you. Thank you for listening to my ramblings on earthquakes and agencies and coaching and mental health. I appreciate your you all being here. Do fire away any questions that you might have. If anybody has any questions, I'd be delighted to answer them if I can. I'm not a doctor or an expert on these things. It's very much, my own personal experience. So maybe, maybe take what I say with a pinch of salt and apply it to you. Q&A. How do I see the Q&A? Bear with me whilst I try and figure out. Here we go. Chris Percival. Were there any warning signs? Absolutely not. None whatsoever. It came out of nowhere. When we were at Center Parcs, I'd had an awesome week. I remember seeing a client of mine who I still work with on the Friday in Manchester. We'd had an awesome day. I saw my best friend in Manchester for lunch. I've been up there for a couple of days. I got the train down and went straight from Bath train station to Center Parcs. Glass of wine, awesome. We played crazy golf in the morning. We went swimming with the kids just before lunch, and it came out of nowhere. And again, this is very much my experience, but for me, there were no warning signs whatsoever. And I think for PTSD, I think that can be quite common. I think, but yeah. For me, there were no warning signs. I have a question from an anonymous attendee. Thank you so much. This has been really helpful. Would you be able to give a bit more of an explainer of the process behind EMDR? It would also recommend a book at this point. I would also recommend a book at this point called The Body Keeps Score, around how trauma and PTSD can have effect on the body and methods to combat it. Thank you. My sister-in-law has actually given me that book to read, and it's sat by my bedside. I haven't yet read it. So I don't know the science behind EMDR, and I'm going to do my best to explain how it's explained to me, but it might be wrong. So as I understand it, you go through some trauma. For me, it was this, we've got seconds to live, I'm holding my kids, sheer panic. And part of your brain shuts down, and I'm going to say the hippocampus. That might be wrong. And your lizard bit of the brain, we still have kind of this reptilian bit of the brain that where we're evolved from. And all reptiles do is fight or flight, and that kicks in and it shuts down the processing of all the sights, sounds, and emotions that are going on. But you're still experiencing it. It's all this, you have all this input that's coming into your brain, and through the day, normally, part of your brain processes them and says, okay, this is attached to this moment in time in this filing cabinet. So everything gets filed away and you can kind of remember it in the past. When you're going through a really, really traumatic event, that stops and your brain kind of focuses all of your energy just on surviving. And then I went through this traumatic event at Center Parcs, or this thing that kind of made all this stuff kind of come back, because it's not been filed away and it hasn't had a timestamp attached to it. And again, this is how I understand it. It hasn't had a timestamp attached to it, so it kind of comes flooding back. And I might be wrong, but how EMDR works is you sit with a therapist and they get you to recount your story. And so I was telling the therapist the story, and as I was telling it, and as I would tell it to any of my friends, as I'm telling it, I can see a mental picture in my head. It's 3D. It's like virtual reality. I can see it, I can feel it, I can hear it, I can see the car here off to my left. I can feel the vibrations, I can smell the food, right, as I was telling this story. And as you get to the worst bit, as she can see me being emotional and shaking and crying and breaking down, they kind of ask you to stop, and she runs her finger like that, and you have to keep your head still and follow from side to side. Follow her finger from side to side, or some therapists have like a red light that moves from side to side. And my understanding is, and I might be wrong, is that it almost works a little bit like REM sleep. So during REM sleep, where your eyes dart around, there is a connection between your eyes and the bit of your brain that processes all your sights and sound and emotions from the day. And this is a similar process. They think there is a connection between your eye movement and processing all this kind of stuff that's going on. It took 3 sessions. On the 3rd session with my therapist, we did the same thing. go through the story. And all of a sudden on the third session, I remember telling her, and I almost felt guilty. I was like, I'm really, really sorry. I could, and I just kind of ran through the story. He says, what do you mean? What are you sorry for? And I was like, it's gone from being this 3D virtual reality, seeing, hearing, smelling what's going on, to it being like a postcard, 1D. It's like a holiday we had 2 years ago. I can see it, I can see the picture of it in my head, but it's not there. It's not around me. It's not surrounding me anymore. And that was 3 1-hour sessions. After the third session, the dizziness and the electric shocks and all that kind of stuff had gone. So that was my experience of it. It might not be anything to do with REM sleep, but there is some kind of connection between the eyes and trauma and the experiences. What have we got? Thank you. That was helpful. I hadn't realized the brains apps are part of PTSD, and it helped me think through my own experiences. Yeah. I think one of the things that I learned is that there's a gray area between all of this stuff. There's a gray area between depression and anxiety, and depression and anxiety are labels that we put on these conditions, but some of the symptoms are so similar, and there's a lot of overlap. They often come. I think in the subject for this talk, I said depression, anxiety, and PTSD because my therapist that I met with, we used all of those terms. There was an element of all of it. So, yeah. Any questions? Alison, thank you so much for sharing your story, Janusz. Do you ever drink alcohol now? Is it complete no? I do drink alcohol now, and I shouldn't. I don't drink a lot. I'll probably have a drink tonight on a Friday. We're going to Devon. I'll probably have a beer. But I really, really notice its effects now. So if I have a beer tonight or a glass of wine tonight, I am miserable tomorrow. It really, really, really affects my mood more than ever. And I wouldn't say I'm not a nice person to be around, but I'm certainly shorter, and probably snappier and less fun to be around, I think, tomorrow, regardless of how much I've had. I feel its effects a hell of a lot more. But I don't, I don't drink a lot. What would you recommend for somebody trying to re-enter work after a few years off due to mental health, e.g. managing anxiety and explaining to employers and colleagues? What would you recommend for somebody trying to re-enter work after a few years off? Yeah, it's a tough one. I think there is still a lot of stigmatism from employers about it. I think employers can potentially see it as a risk, I think. What would you recommend? Email me that one. I don't want to give you an answer. I think that, so do get my email, janusz@digitalagency.coach. I'd be delighted to talk to you further, whoever asked that question, because I don't want to give you some wrong advice, and send you down the wrong path just by answering flippantly. So do email me and let's continue the conversation on that one. Did you ever feel on edge from the stress whilst working? Yeah, but I kind of thrived on that. So I enjoyed that bit of it. I love being out of my comfort zone. I love doing stuff that scare me. I love standing up and talking. Quite enjoy, like doing this, talking about something that makes me feel slightly anxious, I guess. So prior to this, it never had a negative effect on me, and this doesn't have a negative effect on me. So I feel slightly nervous talking about this stuff, but to me, that's not anxiety. The anxiety was this like being in a car crash kind of physical symptoms. So yeah, I did feel on edge. And I say the worst it impacted me was sleep. So I had a couple of employees leave at the wrong times, when I was running my agency. And that made me lose a lot of sleep. And then that has a really, really detrimental impact. But other than that, prior to this, not in a detrimental way, I would say. Anonymous attendee, thank you for your brilliant talk. Do you still experience setbacks? And when you have a setback, do you have a habit for recovering from these? Yeah, I do. I think I said I'm 100% better 90% of the time. I haven't had, it's probably been not that long ago, maybe 5 months since I had a dizzy spell, I think. I remember where we were in Devon, where we're going to tonight, in a restaurant, and everything just went dizzy and spinny. And the depression and the mood thing still happens. And again, often it's due to having drunk alcohol. And what do I do about it? It's a reminder. Normally it's when I've not been doing this, honest to God, doing the walks, getting out every morning, doing some exercise. My body needs that endorphins and the fresh air. And actually, what I didn't say during my talk is a lot of this happened whilst I had a problem with my Achilles and whilst I was having a hip replacement as well. So I couldn't exercise, I couldn't go for a walk, and I've always done a lot of that stuff. So I kind of went through a bit of a double whammy. I was going through all of this and then didn't get the endorphins and the fresh air and all that kind of thing. And I think that probably compounded the effect of my symptoms. But now, if I'm starting to feel a little bit rubbish, I look at that and realize a lot of empty boxes, and I've got to keep going to the gym. I've got to keep continuing with these micro habits and putting the effort in on a daily basis. I think that's it. That's it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you again for attending. I am hopefully, some of that's resonated and helped someone somewhere, I guess. But Janusz@digitalagency.coach. If there's anything you want to ask me that I can help with, I'll be delighted to help if I can. Enjoy the rest of the festival.